Before we get to Bob Chapman, I need to introduce to you my co-facilitator, and that is Sara. She is the managing partner of the Chapman Co Leadership Institute. She comes to us from a strange place called Fairbanks, Alaska, where for a portion of her childhood, she was raised by wild but benevolent wolves. Came to St. Louis, went to Washington University, their business school, and then ran admissions for the business school before joining Barry-Wehmiller about 15 years ago. She ran sales incentive programs and then later started the university inside. And so when you think about Barry-Wehmiller and the number of acquisitions, Sara is really part of the architect of those cultural underpinnings. About 5 years ago, she and I started the Leadership Institute together. And right about now, because I sent her some money through Venmo, she's going to say some nice things about me. Sara?
All right, my co-interviewer facilitator today is Matt Whiat. Matt has an extensive history in the U.S. military as a commander in the United States Air Force. And while the focus of today's webinar interview will be our CEO, Bob Chapman, and his experience, Matt comes from a wealth of background in doing very similar things in terms of how do you navigate the people equation during difficult times from his leadership experience. So you'll be hearing additionally from Matt as well. And we'll get to Bob in a minute, don't worry.
We will get to Bob in a second here, and I know he's just joined us, but the first thing I want you to do is we need to hear from you before we start just talking. I'd like to hear from you. So if you could please get out your smartphone, go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and I want you to enter the code 344707, and I'm going to switch this over into that platform here. And I want to know, the first thing just asking you is, tell me, what company do you work for? Just who's on the line here? We have, let's see, our total number here. We've got almost 300 people. So what company do you work for? And you'll see the code there up at the top. Go to menti.com, MENTI.com. Just open a browser. The code is 344707. You don't need to be on Wi-Fi. Doesn't use very much data. There's no app to download. We just want to see who's on the line here. This is going to build a word cloud for you all to see who are the other companies here. So see a lot of our good friends on here. Coca-Cola Penn Bev, welcome from our friends in South Africa. One Huddle, fantastic organization on the East Coast there. Great CEO doing sending some great stuff on social media. Coolfire right here in St. Louis. Appreciate you all being here. Brado, great creative firm here in St. Louis as well. So we appreciate you joining in on this. In the bottom right-hand corner there, you'll see the number of people that are there. And the bigger the word is here, no, they did not give us more money for sponsorship. It's more people that are putting that word in. So I have more people from the Metro West Fire Department. So Mike Krause and your entire team, thanks so much for all that you do being on the front lines of this. So thank you to your folks for being here as well. Next question, we're going to ask you a few questions here on Mentimeter. So the next question I want to know is, how are you feeling right now? Everything from optimistic, my team is great, to realistic, this is going to take some planning, to pessimistic, kind of tough decisions ahead, or perhaps you're just numb, kind of on autopilot every day. And maybe not even sure, I'm just a little of these all the time. We'll see as these distribute out to how we're actually feeling just in general about how things are going right now. Maybe you're working from home. Maybe your situation is this is a lot of freedom, or maybe your situation is I've locked myself in my basement away from my young kids. Not that I'm projecting here, I'm just saying. All right. And I'm going to ask the next question here. So thank you. So a lot of us feeling kind of realistic overall, and some optimism, sure, and a little bit of not sure, a little bit all the time here. All right, next question. What about your business? So post-COVID, you think, and I think actually it's going to be better than before, perhaps the same as before, lower, or look, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know, you tell me. And a lot of us thinking, actually, this might be an opportunity. All right, business for COVID. So a lot of us thinking, 43% saying, actually, this could be better than before, and some lower and some unsure. And so when we push these together, the smallest percentage of these, if I look at unsure and lower, I am around that 40%, better than before, I'm around that 40%, somewhere 85%. The smallest percentage here is exactly the same. So in other words, there's some change coming. What about your most pressing concern? This one, you're going to have a chance to just write something in, because we wanted, before we just begin and start asking Bob some questions and you get some Q&A from him and he's chatting about this, what are you concerned with right now? Most pressing concerns. We'll see these start to scroll: sales and keeping my team. And I know for a lot of us, it's the time horizon. Some of the people are saying, hey, the key to these questions are time horizon. Sure, and we didn't put that on, as it's 6 months, the average recession. If you look at from 1900 to current day, if I look at the history of the stock market, the average recession has lasted approximately 18 months, where the average expansion has lasted approximately 48 months. So the good question, good comment in the chat room there by Mark Connor about, hey, a lot of these questions, it depends how much time we're talking here. Will it actually recover? That's to be seen. Okay, so this is your most pressing concern: layoffs by people, future sales. I see a lot of the sales, getting a job, our people, cohesiveness of team, our people. One thing that we look at when we see your most pressing concerns, that a lot of things you're talking about are people, health and safety, team safety, the layoffs, getting jobs, health and being of our coworkers. Yeah, the budget's coming down, especially with our clients. All right, I am going to transition us back into the slide deck. I appreciate you jumping in on this with Mentimeter and giving us some of your insight. And as mentioned, we'll provide all the slides, but also even the Mentimeter part, we'll provide those as well. And as Sara comes off mute, we're going to talk a little bit about Barry-Wehmiller.
All right, I know some of you are highly familiar, and we have some Barry-Wehmiller team members joining us today, but a little bit of background for those who are not familiar with our parent company. We are about 12,000 team members around the world, 200 plus locations in 26 different countries, about $3 billion in revenue. Our main markets are consumer goods, and so we make the machines that make all of the things that you see in the grocery store. We're a product of 110 different acquisitions. So as we start to ask Bob some questions, he'll be drawing on not just the global Barry-Wehmiller experience, but the challenge of integrating 110 different family members into the organization, which brings me to the man himself. We often have the opportunity to speak with Bob, but we're often in the audience when he's being introduced. And people will remark on his MBA from Michigan. They will remark on the fact that Inc. magazine named him the #3 CEO in the country. And we have a different way of introducing him. So we feel like these are the top 10 things that you need to know about Bob Chapman. And the first one is, and I feel like this one is critical, he is a huge Justin Timberlake fan. Just information that you need. #2, he is scared of ducks. True fact. #3, he loves cars and eBay, and thus, if you put those two things together, he has a lot of cars. He brings Maxwell House coffee to Europe, and so for all of my Europeans who happen to be on the line or working on it, we're sorry, but he does pack his own coffee maker and coffee when we go to Europe, and he has never met a sales rack at Ralph Lauren he didn't love.
He's also started a social media campaign, TGIM, thank God it's Monday, because he thinks all of us should enjoy work that much. He actually thinks ties are really complicated, and so as you can see, even in this picture here, he wears a bolo, not because of the fashion statement, because of the ease of getting dressed. We were with him, and he once gave an Uber driver business advice on his lawn care company. That was a fascinating ride. He routinely leaves mid-dinner before dessert, so if you ever go to dinner with Bob, eat quickly and order dessert at the start of the business, at the start of the deal. And due to his fashion, he was once mistaken for Che Guevara. And so while we give you these top 10 things about Bob Chapman, it does say something to his character that we can introduce him like this. A lot of you on this webinar know him, you've heard of him or heard him speak. And so the fact that we can have fun with this, I think, belies his underlying true character of just a genuine, pure gentleman and a prince of a man that likes to have a lot of fun. So I'm going to turn this back over to Sara and to Bob, and we're going to kill slides. And I'm going to unmute Bob, and you are going to hear from the man himself.
All right, Bob, I know people are eager to hear your take on the current times and perhaps what we learned in 08 and 09 that is relevant, but we're actually going to start with a little bit more of a history lesson. And so my first question for you is, you had a fairly traditional path through your undergraduate, through graduate school, joining your dad in the Barry-Wehmiller business. where, not the transition that happened, but when you look at kind of your family influences, your mom, your dad, what did you get from them? And what did you learn from your family? Essentially, how did you turn out this way?
As I look back on my childhood, I would say I had a very traditional middle class childhood, and my dad was somewhat kind of a little bit of he was a worrier, and my mom was a good old wonderful Iowa farm girl, very simple, wonderful person. And I believe that for some reason I was blessed with a eternally optimistic personality. When I think, and I always say to myself, can you be a good leader and not be an optimist? Because I believe an optimistic, seeing the glass half full as opposed to half empty is an important part of leadership, because I think our responsibility as leaders is to give those people in our span of care a grounded sense of hope for a better future. So I'm not, I just think I was born with a positive attitude, blessed with a positive attitude.
What would that positive attitude say to the new MBA graduate? You came out of University of Michigan, great business school. You come out of there. Let's say you could go back in time and you could talk to him. You would say,
I thought life was about my success, and as I think back on my journey, it was always about me and my success. And I realize now that so much about leadership is the success of the people around you, not just in your family, but the people you have the privilege of leading. And I think as you look back on your life someday, and I wish as a young MBA I had written my eulogy, that I had actually written my own eulogy, what I would like somebody to say about my life someday. And then I would go try and make it true. Because I think quite often we live, I know I did, from kind of event, you get married, you have kids, you get a job, you join buy your first house, everything is a series of events. And your kids go to school, they graduate from college, they get married. And I think we need to step back, as young people and look at life as a journey. And no journey is usually a straight line. It has its dramatic ups and downs. And I would say to a young MBA, from my greatest of challenges came my greatest personal growth.
so the older version of you is going back to the younger version of you and saying, write your eulogy. So I don't want to go down this dark road too far here, but what's the title of the eulogy? Give us that. Give us the title of Bob Chapman.
I want to make a difference in the lives of others, and therefore make my life more meaningful.
You talk about these life milestones or these events that we go through. Certainly 0809 was one of those transition pieces, or an inflection point, a decision to be made in how you would handle it. And at the time, and I want to frame this carefully for everybody listening in, we don't directly compare 0809 to current times. They are very different in the speed, the substance, the dramatic turn in the markets. However, the thinking is something that has inspired us in current day. So if you go back to, I believe you were traveling in Italy at the time, the news that we were going to be impacted in 08, 09, and talk about what are the thoughts that go through your head and how to approach the situation we were in.
Well, I think important to our listeners is that you have to understand kind of the background upon which, when I was sitting in that hotel, kind of formulated my thinking. And we had been on a journey, Sara, which you began with us on, to understand that the 12,000 people that work for us were not engineers, accountant, production team members, machinists, etc. They were somebody's precious child that was in our care. And that we had begun, through our guiding principles of leadership, the foundation upon which we believe to lead. We had gone out and decided we wanted to not hang them on the wall, but to put them in people's heads and hearts. So I had been having these listening sessions where I said to people, we care about you, we're trying to give you a good future, and together we can do good things. And so when the crisis hit, we had been in this mode of prophesizing on a different way of thinking about leadership. And so when it hit us, my natural instinct, I think it was in February, early March of 09, when a major order that was in our backlog got put on hold. We thought one thing to not get new orders, but it's another thing to lose the orders you already had. And I sat in this hotel room and I said, oh my God, I've been telling people we care. And we say we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. If we let people go, which would have been my natural instinct, it's what we do. It would have been my natural instinct. We're going to hurt people badly. And if we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people and we let people go, we're going to hurt them. And so I said to myself, what would a caring family do if a member of a family was in stress? We would all pitch in and we all might take a little pain, so nobody would take a lot of pain. So if you understand that we had launched these guiding principles of leadership and begun to talk about them, then in that context, when we embraced the challenge, we had kind of the foundation to act upon that in a totally different way, looking at the people in our care as somebody's precious child, and we didn't want to hurt them. And so we came up with this idea of shared sacrifice. We'll all take a little pain so that nobody will have to take a lot of pain. So that was really laid the foundation for me to have that thought that stimulated our unique approach to the '08 downturn, which was the most severe we had ever seen and experienced at the time. And again, we didn't know what was going to happen then either. It was the kind of collapse of the banking system and the stock market. So again, our guiding principle of leadership became the foundation upon which it shaped our thinking. It wasn't just a random thought. It was from this constantly out preaching that we care about you, and together we can do good things, pay people fairly and treat them superbly. So all these things came together to form a totally different way than I had historically responded to these issues, which is, we have to let people go. We don't have the work. And so we took a totally different approach, which really made a dramatic impact on our people.
I'm just going to jump in real quick and just remind the audience, if you have questions, we'll ask Bob some questions, but if you have questions for him, just put it in the Q&A there or in the chat. We'll pick it up there. Easier in the Q&A for us. Any question you want, put it in there and we'll work it into the questions we're asking him. Bob, you mentioned the '08, '09 downturn, and it was more of a protracted recession. What are some differences you see between that? Sara mentioned the fact that we're talking about the very similar thinking style, but so what's your thinking style now as we start entering into COVID?
The beauty is '08, '09 happened pretty suddenly too, not quite as suddenly as this. And it followed a period of quite a bit of prosperity. So as this COVID-19 crisis hit us, we have been strengthened by the resolve and the learnings from the '08, '09 to bring into this. And one of the things that never occurred to me, and I'd want your listeners to know, is when we talk about needing to adjust our teams and let, unfortunately, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people go, we can monetize what that will mean financially, okay? We can say if you take those people out, it'll reduce our cost by $5 million a year, whatever the number is. What I had no idea is the person that didn't stay, that didn't get let go, the damage to them of seeing their friends who they work with, who they know their family, lose their job, and the negative impact, the collateral damage to the people that stay, and the people knowing, okay, if it happened to Joe or Mary who sit next to me, it could happen to me. So that feeling of circle of safety is not there. You don't feel safe anymore because you just saw 2 or 3 people in your team get asked to leave suddenly, walked out the door knowing it's going to hurt their family. So we really learned a lot about what I call the collateral damage of this. And the other thing I was amazed at is when we did what we did, which was ask people to take a month off without pay, it was a dramatic positive to people, which surprised me because we were asking people to give up 1/12 of their income. But what they were doing is they were giving to others. It wasn't the fact, my impression in general, it wasn't so much that they lost 1/12 of their income. They felt they were helping their team members who they work with every day. They know their kids, they know their spouse, and they were helping them. So it was a genuine act of gratitude, of friendship, of compassion for others, of empathy for others. And I was really startled in a positive way how people were willing to give up that time to help their friends and colleagues at work. And that would never have occurred to me before. we went through what we went through in 08 and I had no idea how people would react. And I was incredibly surprised at how the beauty of humanity came out through those initiatives.
Yeah, but I think as somebody who lived through that time with you, I think the unforeseen benefit, and it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around a benefit around a challenging time, but would be the increased trust, the empathy, and the kind of the currency that was created as people were able to donate furlough days, take days for other people, and kind of share what that experience meant. We had a question come into the Q&A that is separate from that, navigating that decision between furlough and layoffs. What is the responsibility of leadership to reduce anxiety? So what are the other things you think is critical for leadership to do during this time to reduce people's anxiety?
I would say to you, we have been doing a video communication once a week where I basically shape the message and it goes out in 10 different languages around the world because we operate all over the world with our 12,000 people. And the emails I've seen come back where people just appreciate hearing how the company's doing and what we're doing and why we're doing it directly from me. That reinforces what they're hearing from their leaders. So I would say to you, it amplifies in any situation of crisis the need for thoughtful communication that understands the way people are feeling and communicates in an empathetic way and listens to them and helps them get through this together. Because this is a time when we need an amazing amount of empathy for the impact this makes on others, the insecurity it creates, the doubts, the financial security. So communication and listening are amplified dramatically in times like this, and shaping your message to show that you care. That is the most important thing I can say to anybody, is to look at those people in your span of care as your precious children, and treat them just like you would like your child treated, to help them get through this together and feel cared for and heard and understand the feelings they may have in this period of time.
I'll have another question from the audience. I know this is a little bit more of a difficult one, but if you think about your own journey and when Barry-Wehmiller is first starting, when it's a $20 million company, not the $3 billion global organization it is today. So back then it's not as diversified. The cash reserves are not what they are. For a leader who either has not planned as well, or for someone who doesn't have a diversified business model right now, what's your perspective? What's your advice to them?
Well, first of all, it's a great time to look at how your business model is performing. There's an expression, you need to get the right people on the bus. I think my version of that is you need to build a safe bus, okay? And that individual asking the question may be in the process of trying to build a safe bus, but he doesn't have it fully integrated in a safe way. So the business model is the safe bus, and then you need drivers who know where they're going and how to get there safely to drive that bus, to drive that business model. So in the early days, what I would say to you is you got to constantly look at the design of your business model and to make sure that you are, like your life, you're not building on any one pillar, and you're being as prudent as you can. And it's harder in a startup business than one with substance, but you got to constantly say, I always say when Ford builds an F-150, they go out and put it in the worst conditions they possibly can to make sure it holds up. Well, you need to look at your business model. How is it performing now? And what do you learn from this in terms of, as you come out of this, how you can refine that design to make it more resilient to the changes that inevitably happen in our economic environment. And again, I had, 08, 09 was only the recent, we had the dot-com meltdown, we had the 87 stock market crash, we had high inflation. I have been through a lot of situations. But again, our responsibility as leaders is to give those people who count on us a grounded sense of hope that we can get through this together. That is our responsibility every day when we come in, is to understand that people are going to be looking to us for hope and faith that we can get through this together. And it was amazing the gifts people will give you if you create an environment where they feel valued and part of the solution.
A challenging question is how to navigate. We've had a couple questions come in. One, how do you handle just non-performance, but also how do you handle a business unit that's underperforming, not due to COVID, but certainly that circumstances happening during this time. As a business leader, do you handle non-performance or non-performance as a business unit differently because of the circumstance that we're in?
You know, that's a good question. There's a lot of times a business unit is not performing because of the leader, okay? And we quite often take it out on the people through layoffs, downside, et cetera. And so when you look at, again, your business model, I designed our business model so we're not dependent upon any one industry, any one technology, any one market. And I run it conservatively because I care about our 12,000 people and the customers we serve and the communities we're a part of, so that people can have a sense of comfort that they're part of an organization, that they can build a family, they can live in a home, they can live reasonable lives with their families. So I would say to you, until you kind of get that airspeed, and again, when you've got a non-performance issue, the question is it the business model? Is it the business leader? And you really got to take a step back. And this is not a time, in my opinion, when you deal with non-performance. You always deal with non-performance because non-performance is hurting people, okay? And one of the early things I learned is I put up with an individual because I knew him, I knew his family, I'd hired him, and I really wanted to work out for him, but I realized one day I was so focused on him that I wasn't focused on the people. His lack of leadership was hurting. So, I mean, I think this is a complex question. The question is, in any family, we may have a child that is at a different stage of enjoying life compared to the others. So, you got to look at every one of these situations. You got to look at the leaders. You got to look at the business model. You got to look at the fundamentals, and you have to make decisions. And you've got to make the best decision you can for the long term, because unless you know where you're going, it's hard to make a short-term decision.
Bob, let's stay on that same vein, if you don't mind, because there's a few questions that came in here about, and I want you to, if you don't mind, comment both on the activity and the language that's being used. So somebody says, basically, what do you fire somebody for? We're starting to go down that road right now with the non-performance, but can you talk about that, whether it's here or in non-COVID times, people hear a message of this caring for people. Basically, do you fire people? What do they get fired for, Barry-Wehmiller?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the language.
Yep.
I hate the word fire, okay? When we talk about treating people in your span of care as somebody's precious child, the word, as I understand it, the expression fire people came from the French firing squad, okay? When you deal with issues, and we deal in our families, we call it hard love, okay? You do everything you can do with your kids to be a good steward of that child, but occasionally, and more often than not frequently, you have to make decisions that are hard for that child to embrace, but it's right for that child. The same thing with a division. Sometimes the best decision you can make is ask somebody to step aside, not to fire somebody. Would you fire your own kids? Would you treat somebody you cared for with that language? One of the problems we have is the language of business is broken. We have managers, bosses, and supervisors. We fire people. All these things are to make it so we can do these hard things without feeling the impact on the people that we impact. So again, when we ask people to step aside, that quite often is the best thing for them, okay? But how we do that and how we treat them is important as the decision, because we want that person as best possible to come away with a chance to learn from that and grow from that and be a better leader in the next position they go into. But how we deal with people is so important. Again, sometimes you look at a business not performing, and is it the leader who I hired and I'm kind of committed to, or is it the business fundamentals itself, And that's not an easy answer in many cases, okay? To separate the issue of the leader hasn't brought about the right technology, the right market focus, the right financial discipline, or is it a flawed business model? And that's a call you've got to make, because we've got to remember, we always say it's around people, purpose, and performance. It starts with our fundamental responsibility to the people in our span of care around a purpose that inspires them, but then we have to create value. if we are not creating value, we are going to lose the confidence of the people that give us the privilege of being in business. And creating value is extremely important. You cannot be good to your family if you do not create value through your professional employment. We cannot be good to our people if our businesses are not creating value. And so I would say to you that that's a tough call, but it's the call of leadership to be able to do that. And quite often it's what we call tough love. And that's what we have to exercise.
Yeah, and just a follow-up really quick, not necessarily a question, but just a quick comment. It's a really good call out that sometimes can it be the leader, but sometimes is it how the business is organized. We see this in professional sports teams where I'm just simply going to replace the coach. But if I haven't replaced the underpinnings of the overall management of the organization, the recruiting, all of those things, that it actually doesn't change the outcome. So great call out. And just if anyone is from France listening in, we are not blaming you for the word fire. There are other firing squads. Bob's got a great comment. The language and business and we use comes sometimes from our military.
We need a more compassionate, and caring language as we deal with people in our span of care. And that is incredibly, because remember, we talk about the concern of the virus on the health of our people, okay? We're very concerned with the health of our people. We wash our hands, we social distance, we stay home if we can, all to protect the health. But the way we deal with this crisis in terms of our language, the behavior in terms of the way we treat people, creates stress. And stress is a major factor in the health and welfare of our people. So not only do we want them to be healthy from a virus standpoint, avoiding the virus, but we want them to feel cared for, and we want to call them to be there for each other. So this is a time when we all come together and we can learn a great deal. We can look at our business model. We can look at the performance of our teams, and we can challenge everybody to rise to a higher level, because in many crises, real leaders emerge and real people come together and work harder for each other. And that's what we got to inspire our teams to do. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. And it calls all of us to play the game at the highest level so we can get through this together and learn and live a better life from what we learn.
So on that note, and one thing to mention, I know there's a few questions in the Q&A about, could you elaborate on the steps of shared sacrifice? And rather than go down that particular road, in this format, we have a great deal of resources that we can send you. So we'll be putting up our email addresses, and we can break down for you kind of the step-by-step behind shared sacrifice and the how-to. We're very happy to do that and have some ready resources for you all. We also have some questions along the vein of, we are in a very challenged industry. We were forced to do a layoff, or we have a lot of people who are on furlough. So how do I show up as a leader? What's my responsibility? How do I lead those people that are left? So I want to still have a people first culture for the people that are left, or my workforce is furloughed. And so can you comment on how we have to show up and what should we be doing for those people that have been through some traumatic experiences?
Well, I think we have to show up every day with a great deal of empathy. We've got empathy and obviously the words we choose. In my worst days in 1983, when we lived day to day on cash, we had no idea whether we'd make it the next day. I don't ever remember losing hope. I don't ever remember being frustrated or concerned. I showed up every day with a positive attitude that we will get through this together. Now, one of the things I believe is, we had a situation in our division out in Flagstaff, Arizona, where we had a major customer dramatically change their buying behavior. And at that time, this business unit was highly dependent. And what we said, we explored every single option before we considered the fact that we had to adjust the team level to the new level of business. And when we did, we approached those people who we were going to not be able to keep in our organization with tremendous compassion, empathy, and help to help them get through this. And we stayed with everybody to make sure that they landed okay. So one of the things I would say to you for the health of the people that stay in your company is, how are you dealing with the people that you were not able to keep? And so I would say to you, compassion, listening, and leadership. This is when you need to be a positive force in the world. People want to believe in the company, they want to believe in you, and they want to believe there's hope. And I mean grounded sense of hope, not, I don't mean bringing a Disney World attitude things. We've got to give people a sense of hope. And that is our responsibility. We got to look for the goodness. And what I'd say is I'd be incredibly focused on acts of goodness, of caring. When we were in that crisis, Sara, you remember, we highlighted people who volunteered to take time for somebody else, who said, look, I appreciate this time, even if it's a furlough, I now get time with my kids. So we spent as much time looking for the goodness while we were dealing with the challenges, so that it gave people a sense of hope. Not just...
Bob, if I can jump in and ask this then, because I want to come back to you on this. So there's a lot of difference between 08 and 09 and COVID right now. Tell me, how did you spend your time? You as the leader, how did you spend your time during the economic downturn? How are you spending your time now as the leader?
Well, I think the first word is being empathetic to how this impacts our 12,000 people and their families. Okay, that was the first thing. I want to make sure that our team members feel we are in this together and we will get through this together.
And how are you doing that as a leader? How are you doing that?
Through communication. Obviously, I'm reaching out more, communicating more, sending a message more, listening more. So I would say to you that it's an incredibly important time to shape the message that you want people to hear. It gives them hope for the future, okay? And that is what people desperately want. They're looking for grounded sense of good news. So I would say to you that, again, that's the responsibility. So what am I doing? I'm spending a lot of time communicating around the world, and the very medium we're using today is incredibly powerful. You can see people's faces, you can talk to them. And so I would say to you, the combination of me communicating and also sharing some very positive messages that I'm getting from people from around the world. For example, we got a beautiful message from one of our consulting team members this morning about how they feel now because of what we did in 08, 09. They feel comforted. They're not concerned because, again, part of being positive is sharing positive messages that show that other people are dealing with this and dealing in a positive way. So a lot of time on being positive and being grounded and making sure that we are doing those things we can do that do not compromise the integrity of our belief that we are stewards of these 12,000 lives, and we will get through this together, and we will be stronger because of it, and we will be more connected as a family because of it.
One last question before we do a lightning round with you. And that question has to do with certainly Barry-Wehmiller, the capital equipment goods organization, is classified as an essential business. And so we're still sending folks to work, and yet we have a responsibility for their health and safety. Had a question in the Q&A, an individual who they're actually opening up a plant, and so now they're in the position of, I'm actually sending people to work during this crisis. How do you balance the business responsibility, and we're a critical part of the food supply chain, and that's a responsibility in and of itself, with, yes, I want to protect the health and safety of my people?
When we think about the first responders, these healthcare workers around the world who are going to work every day and in the worst of conditions, in the midst of the virus, to help care for others. And I would say to you, I feel the same way for our people because all of our plants around the world are operating in China, in Italy, Serbia, all around the world are operating because people know that they are a vital part of the health of our organization. So we can talk about, if you will, the physical health and protecting the virus. There are things you can do at work that are responsible. But what you're trying to do is make sure that if you feel comfortable and you can go into work and perform your function, which is critical to be at work, that you are helping your colleagues have a future. You're not just doing it for your salary, you're doing it for your friends and associates at work. So I think keeping our plants operating, just like keeping our economy operating, while we care about the people in the world who could be or have been infected by this virus, we also care about that we don't destroy the economic system that provides for our families around the world. So we've got to do both. We want to protect for the physical health, the emotional health, the financial health, and we got to keep all of those in balance. And so we are trying to be responsible stewards of those lives, encourage the kind of behavior that will protect them. But again, we want to make sure that those people who make the decision that they feel comfortable coming to work, they socially distance, they protect themselves, and they contribute to the health of the company, which is important to their friends and colleagues at work. So there is a higher calling out. When you see healthcare, why would you be a doctor or nurse and go into a hospital full of virus when it could affect your family? Because you are doing it for the calling. And I believe our frontline leaders, those people going into our plants around the world, are those frontline leaders who are keeping our companies viable, showing that our customers, we need to serve them. Because again, not all of our plants around the world where we produce capital equipment for making food and toilet paper and corrugated box board are all deemed to be essential, but they're not only essential for the economy, they're essential for people's livelihood. And so we are very blessed that our people have elected to do that. They've been incredibly responsible. We will get through this because our frontline leaders, just like the doctors and nurses, came in and gave of themselves every day for their friends and colleagues because they know their role is critical to help in shaping the future of their friends and colleagues.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I know we have some questions on this about value creation, and we do have a lot of tools and resources that we're going to share with you afterwards on how we think through value creation that we use with our clients. We'll make sure we get you all of those resources and we can follow up with you. Bob, this is a question that I'm going to give to you that you commonly ask a lot of people at dinner, and it changes the entire construct of it, and then we all walk away very quickly. But you like to ask the question, with the time that you have left on this earth, what do you hope to accomplish? And so you have a lot of time left on this earth. We've sequestered you away in some attic in Florida, as everyone can see here. So you are socially distancing. So with the time you have left on this planet, Bob, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I used to say that I wanted to touch as many people's lives positively as I could in a lasting way in the time I have left. I would say that has evolved. My thinking has evolved. Today, I believe we have been blessed with the way in which we can live and work together and send people home knowing that who they are and what they do matters. I believe that we've been blessed with the way we were intended to live and work together, where we would have a chance to, if you will, play the game of business in a way that we brought our gifts and we went home each night feeling valued. And so I hope in the time I have left to show that business, if embracing these principles of guiding principles of leadership, where we genuinely care about the people we have the privilege of leading. And again, I want to say real quickly here, in an interview one time, I was asked for about an hour and a half about our company. And at the end, the professor said, you know, you're the first CEO I've ever interviewed that didn't talk about your product. And I said, I've been talking about a product for the last hour and a half. I will not leave this earth proud of the machinery we built for our customers. I will leave this earth proud of the people who built those machines. And I think that is our focus. Our product is our people. And that is, and I want to leave this earth with business becoming a powerful force for good. Not asking the government, what are you going to do to help my business, but what can our business do to help our country, our companies through this environment? What can we do to all get through this together and come out of it stronger, better connected in humanity and with a common purpose?
Yeah, thank you. And everyone out there, the 300 or so of you, you've given us the gift of your time. We have at least probably 30 questions or so. I know we're not going to get to all those, but it's our promise that we're going to look at those questions and give you a response. So if you put a question in, you're getting a response. We're going to transition over, and Sarah's going to ask Bob some lightning round questions. Sarah.
All right, lightning round. Here we go. Give me 2 words that your wife, Cynthia, would use to describe you.
Positive and caring.
Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Treat others as you would like to be treated.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
Letting people go when I failed as a leader.
Your favorite book? Besides Everybody Matters, obviously.
Shameless plug. Nice.
Yeah, I would say Ken Blanchard's book, 1 Minute Manager, would be my favorite book.
If you had to have dinner with somebody who is alive today, right now, who would it be?
You know, the Archbishop of the Episcopal Church I listened to on Easter, and I thought he was incredibly thoughtful, and I would love to have dinner with him. He seemed like an amazingly thoughtful human being.
What is one thing everybody should know about where you grew up, Iowa?
That it's just good, basic people.
Where is the place that you go to recharge? We often hear that you are always on, you're always on message. Where's the place that you go to recharge?
Working with people like you and Matt.
That's a good answer. We did not.
Oh my
see
gosh,
you
look
say
at
that.
that.
I also appreciate that you said earlier your listeners, as if this was a radio show that we regularly host, but so maybe
Right.
we will. This one actually is for Matt. What is your number one fashion tip?
For Matt, lose the shoes.
Right, on that note, can I transition us back?
Hold on that note, your final piece of advice for this group.
Be incredibly empathetic to the people whose life you touch through your leadership, and show them that you genuinely care about them.
Right, and that is a good transition into a tool that we are going to give you all today. So I know there were a lot of questions on the how-to. We are happy to help with that piece. And so we're going to ask you one more question and give you one tool that you can take back to your organization.
And you all should see the Mentimeter up here. And so if you want to start just putting in to the Mentimeter about what your organization has done. Do we see that, Sarah, just to verify for me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So what organization has inspired you during COVID? But can you just tell me why? Like not just the name, but just maybe if it's Eurofilms and what they do. Just a quick sentence. Or if it's a person that you know, like a Simon Sinek or Bob Chapman, this is not a thank you to us. Okay, Barry-Wehmiller setting an example. Who else? Like what's another organization? But it's important. I want you to tell me why. Okay, Dyson, the co-ventilation, their innovation. Okay, got it, Simon Sinek, but why? What do they do? Okay, your own company putting people first. Marriott, the CEO video showed enormous empathy and self-sacrifice and a lot of vulnerability. That video has gone around a lot. Let's see, the Crossing Church, Hope Wins. Okay, and I want to know what they did. What's the activity they did for the good of this group? What are the things that people did? And if you'd like, and if it's just not enough for you to put it into Mentimeter, you can put that into chat room as well. I want to know what organization has inspired you during COVID and what are they doing, the behavior? Okay, the textile industry changing rapidly to support the crisis, asking people to care for one another. Una Vida Tequila supporting local unemployed bar staff. That's a good example. Wells Fargo supporting the local community. Grocery stores taking steps to pay employees extra and thinking about safety steps. It's a great one. Refractory restaurant doing a GoFundMe program for their servers. Another great one. Okay, maybe they're setting the example by things they do. American Airlines, a nice plug there for their purpose statement, their why, care for people on life's journey. I want to know what the behavior is. Here's a great one. Lullaby Lane Nursery, hand-delivered connection bags to all their children. Coca-Cola Penn Bev, they're out of Cape Town, South Africa, where Chapman Co has an office. The managing director addressed different team every day, every morning.
One in chat, Midwest Bank Center working round the clock to get businesses approved and funded for their PPP loans.
That's great. Gillette making face shields. Trader Joe's, great company, keeping my family and I fed, sure. Cleveland Clinic, working with the Amish community to provide essential supplies to the hospitals. Center for Creative Leadership, running seminars to help leaders. Mont Blanc, the pen company, creating masks in their factories, but not publicizing. That's a great one. Thanks for bringing that up. We're going to look that one up.
Microbreweries making hand sanitizers. We saw AB do that. A lot of local breweries doing that as well.
Yep, one of our previous clients, EJ Gallo, they've transitioned doing a lot of building hand sanitizers instead of working on those. Sharing real videos. Bank Independent, countless overtime hours to approve SBA loans to impact the community. There's a great one, thank you. Restaurant with curbside delivery and all the tips going to employees who are not currently working. I'm going to transition us back in this. And the reason we asked you this question, I'm going to bring us back in the slide deck. The reason we asked you those questions are before we tell you what inspires other people, I wanted you all to see what inspires you. Not a single one, either in the chat room or in the Mentimeter, you said to me, I'm inspired by this company because of their robust business model and their share price has stayed the same. You talked about, you listed companies or individuals and what they are doing for other people. Bob even mentioned this. It's less about saving a company and more about saving each other. And in doing so, yes, the company survives. We just wanted to give a little of you back to you to show you what inspires you are people serving people. And we're going to talk about a tool set we can use. Sarah?
All right, and I know we had a couple of questions on perhaps you have these values and a purpose statement that you can hold on to. Some of the questions were around, we haven't done this work and we haven't shown up in this way, but we want to now. Can we start in the middle of this crisis? And our answer to that would be absolutely you can. And some questions to ask, and I know today is not our best day for most of us. But a question that we can ask is, what do we look like on our best day? What are the things that we do as an organization? Our belief is that our values exist, we just might not have named them. And so having a conversation around the definition of value, which is one's judgment of what's important in life, and if we reference perhaps the things that we put on the Who We Are section of our website, and do we start by using those values as a filter? Another question that came in on the Q&A is, how do we engage middle management in this way of thinking? Well, one of the things that inspires people is to say, let's talk about who we are and use that as a jumping off point. Bob gave us the great example at Barry-Wehmiller. It's we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. Therefore, how would a caring family respond? That applies to this particular situation, but it also applies to every single decision that you make as a business leader. And so we have a little say, don't say, do, don't do to further articulate this versus according to our HR policy directive, we start with because we believe that this is the right thing to do. We ask the question, how does this decision align or misalign with our values versus there's a time for values and a time for business. We are big proponents of recognition and celebration. So we say, I want to highlight this team member by living this value versus I don't know why people suddenly start talking about people in boats rowing in the same direction. Do, don't do. We're interested in where we are and not living our values, and we're not going to assume that everybody has heard this communication. Lots of Q&A on how often do I have to communicate. If your people are working from home, send them something they can print out and put in their home workstation. And finally, use your values as a North Star for culture and decision making for all stakeholders. Yes, and Q&A came in on, yes, your employees, the people in your span of care, yes, your customers, but also your vendors and suppliers. And are we asking those questions? As we transition here, a couple forms of feedback. One is we're going to put you back quickly into Mentimeter and give feedback to each other. So based on anything that you heard us discuss today in this webinar, what perhaps are you going to try or do differently? This is not feedback to us. We have a lot of smart people on the line, and so we want to know what are your ideas so that you can see each other's thoughts and concerns. So what's something that you will try, that you will do, that you will communicate? And if you put that into Mentimeter, we'll capture it, we'll send you the entire list so that you have the collective thinking of all 300 or so people who happen to be joining us today. So talk positively and set examples, post your values, don't take for granted that people know what they are. We have a phrase, if you've been on some of our earlier webinars, turn it up to 11 in terms of communication. So spinal tap reference, I have to do it more and I have to do it on a specific cadence. Being more positive, channeling that optimism, shining a light on what's good. The language that we use. So Bob gave us this example of it's not okay to say fire, but perhaps we do need to make some transitions in our business. Giving people a mental health day. Using my ears more than my mouth. Being more empathetic and looking forward, thinking about others during this time and how my work affects them, and focus on the collective well-being of people rather than the loss of the business. Sending the values out to staff, again, a note on that piece, and empathetic listening, which is, of course, a core tenet of all of our curriculum. As those continue to come in, and please feel free to get your idea in there so that we can capture it, and you will get to this output. Back in Zoom, we're going to throw up a poll question, and this is feedback to us. And so this is the first Q&A. Perhaps Matt and I will start our own radio show or podcast. And we are going to be doing other interviews. So we want to know if you enjoyed this, how valuable it was to you. So if you wouldn't mind, that poll is up. If filling out those couple of questions, that's great feedback to us. And we'll throw up a couple additional slides. We do have a leadership series that we are running, and we'd love if you could join us. And so we are on the third topic, and actually tomorrow is pivot your strategic plan. So how do you look at the things that you're doing and given the current circumstance, reestablish goals for current day, but also perhaps the new normal that we might be entering into. And if you're not familiar with our run of courses, we do have a music theme. So we titled this one's going to platinum. So you can go to our website and sign up for the series. We also wanted to provide our email addresses to you. If you want to chat further, if you want kind of the nitty-gritty how-to, please feel free to email us, and we're happy to walk you through that and send you some resources. We are doing a lot of online facilitation. So if we can help your leadership team meeting, whether it's brainstorming or problem solving, we're happy to do that. We're doing a lot of executive coaching, and we're doing a lot of custom webinars. So this is a time that we can lean in and engage those people, perhaps that are working in different circumstances.
And hey, Sarah, just maybe just to mention, there's no contract and there's no fees.
Yep.
So right now, during this time of need, if we can help and we can serve, give us a call. We'll help, or at least be a sounding board to you.
As I mentioned, tomorrow we have our strategic plan webinar. Friday, kind of how to navigate the layoff furlough decision. And then April 23rd, we're going to do an interview similar to this with Barry-Wehmiller Chief People Officer Ron Spencer. And so that's definitely one that you'll want to put on your calendars and sign up for if you enjoyed this format and want to learn a little bit more. Rhonda's been there since the beginning with Bob and can fill in a lot of the how-to as well.
Yeah, I would just re-emphasize that part with Rhonda. She's really been in the details. It's a global company, so she's really been in the details about how specifically are we using government programs and how are we investigating those to make the best, most thoughtful and caring decision forward. And being the head of traditional HR, we call it the people team or the chief people officer. She can really get into those details if you'd like. So those are the upcoming opportunities. Hey, we are going to hang out. We're probably going to drop video. We'll go on mute because we want to be respectful of your time. We're going to start some music. We're going to play you out here, but we will be online here. So if you have other questions, we'll answer them on the text there. And if you put in any question at all, we'll make sure that we're getting you a response. And so as we mentioned, we'll provide you the slides, the resources, all of the Mentimeter questions there. We will email those to you. Just a huge thanks to Bob Chapman for his time today. And as Sarah closes us out and says bye, just really appreciate you being here and hanging out with us for an hour. Sarah?
All right, from St. Louis in our basements and from Bob's attic in Florida, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you at our next event.